That Sunday afternoon, I was driving home after a typical summer day. After sleeping, I went to church and then played golf with the guys that morning. Since our second child moved out, we've been going on Sundays every week for the past year. Laura, who was our oldest, had reached the age of 20. She moved to a nursing school outside her home 2 years ago. Josh, our newborn, started college early in the previous year. My expectation was to spend a peaceful Sunday with Jenny, my wife of 21 years. Upon entering the garage, I realized my luck had not run out by the time when I finally had the chance to see my wife, who was an incredible woman, even after 21 years. Her car was already in the garage. Joan and Petra, two of her old friends, were visited by her for the day. At this juncture, I was anticipating an evening of enjoying steak and sharing a cozy meal on the couch or in the bedroom with my loved ones. The sight of Jenny sitting at the kitchen table with a glass and half-full bottle of wine was so strange that it started to give me faint warnings in my brain as I entered the house. I went over and kissed her on the cheek. Her gaze caught my attention with a keenness, both fearful and determined. "Let's have a conversation, Dave." Instinctual alarms were replaced by the sound of a horn. I did, as she inquired, sat down and eagerly shoved my feelings into the background. It's something I learned by heart as someone who managed a large-scale underground mine. My power was so great that I could completely disconnect from any emotional thoughts and concentrate on rational reasoning. My 25-year career has been enriched by this. It's impossible to experience emotion when you have to pull your partner out of a 200-ton rubble for 2 days, or perform CPR on someone who has been thrown from their truck and injure the base of their skull. While work is ongoing, emotions can be pushed aside and nightmares will eventually surface. I held back, calmly, with a blank stare, as if my emotions had run out of control. "Dear Dave, I'm loving you so much. Aren't you familiar with this? Of course, honey is a factor. You've been telling me about it at least once a week for the past 20 years. Do you have such a deep affection for me? Dave, what's the deal with you?" "Without a doubt, dear. I've been in love with you for 23 years and it's still the same every day. After all these years, I wouldn't be afraid to take a shot for you. You made my heartfelt sentiments when you entered into matrimony with me. When you were in PMS, every time you screamed at me, I loved you. I comforted you by gently tugging on your expanding belly during both of your pregnancy. I showed my love to you by taking a break from work to care for you and your children during your infectious mononucleosis. Despite the pain you endured, including a fall, sprained both your wrists and had to wipe them off for 3 weeks, I still loved you. I still love you." She may have squished slightly at some of my confessions, but she clearly had a plan and continued with her script. "Dave, I have a question for you, and I would appreciate it if you could hold back until I finished reading it. Would you be able to help me with this?" I acquiesced and took out my notebook and pen that I always had on me. I hesitated to say anything as my emotions were still in the background, and I didn't believe that my voice would express my sudden nervousness. The words, "we need to talk," could have sparked a productive conversation at some point. Nonetheless, it is likely that this was not the case in this century. You are aware that Joan and Petra have a husband. You may not be aware of the fact that they both have a partner. Jen stared at me, hoping for a response. I made every effort to keep her away from anything. I was confident that I understood the direction of the conversation, but I didn't exhibit any. The lovers are known to both Bill and John, and they're content with the situation. It turns out that Bill is sexually aroused by Joan's presence with other men, and she brings her mistresses to their house where Bill observes them. During the monologue, Jenny stared at the table. With that final phrase, she looked into my eyes. It's possible that she was hoping for a hint that I could be Bill. I attempted to make her perceive me as nothing but apathetic, cold, insensitive, and neutral. She glanced at the table again. I typed the sentence in my notepad. She claims that after Joan's lover passes away, she and Bill have the most amazing sexual encounters they've ever had in their marriage. I'm devastated that someone no longer lives alongside me, and my heart goes out to those who have lost friends. My respect goes out to all my friends. She glanced at me again. Her fear was evidently triggered by my impassive expression, which seemed to involve secretly entering the weigh-in box like a butcher's hands. She carried on with her prepared speech. Despite being told about her lover by Petra, John wasn't as taken by Bill as he was when they had a hissing fit. He is not willing to allow his partner, Petra, into the house, so they decide to head to a motel. It seems that her partner is already married. It's customary for her to be home before midnight. John declines to have sexual relations with her during these nights, but he does so on any other night. He demands that her lover always seek protection. Petra states that she and John are now having twice as much sex as before, which is significantly more enjoyable than when she first started seeing her partner. According to her, she gained knowledge from her partner who is now with John and feels a stronger connection with him than ever before. I'll say it again. There, John is also present. Petra and John's lovers are younger than them. They both claim that young lovers feel incredibly desirable and attractive. John is now with her fifth partner and claims that meeting young men at bars gives her an incredible sense of excitement to return home. She is always being targeted by multiple men and has the option to choose one of them. Most of them are not comfortable with having sex in front of Bill when they come to her house. In such situations, she spends the night at their home having sex by herself. She suggests that the next time they want to do it again, she should come to her house. Either they accept her conditions or she strays from them. They usually agree to her conditions because they know how beautiful she is. By now, I had a feeling that this was going to be in the wrong place at the right time. I soothed myself, pushed the final emotion into the dark corner, and stimulated my logic circuits to work overtime. I rapidly devised 2 or 3 strategies to proceed. They all shared a commonality in the presence of evidence. I needed evidence, and I had to get it done quickly. Upon learning how to use my phone's voice recorder, I quickly turned it on for 2 minutes before returning to the kitchen and placed it in my pocket. Once again, I took my seat and was the first to speak. "What is the purpose of this, Jennifer?" She remained silent when I permitted her to commence a new monologue. "I've been living as a housewife for 21 years, Dave, and I'm 47. My appearance is deteriorating, and I notice more wrinkles on a daily basis. My objective is to show that I am still attractive to men. It is necessary for me to provide evidence that this is accurate." For what seemed like an endless amount of time, she hesitated. This sentence was the most crucial one for a marriage. "I conveyed to you the way Bill and John handled it." She gazed at me with a worried expression and inquired, "How will you handle it, kid? Are you willing to watch like Bill? Is it necessary for me to relocate? I'm not as competent as I was reputed to be." My emotions retreated from their comfort zone and challenged logic once more. It was evident that fury had a clear victory. I resisted without saying anything. I remained silent for an extended period, which made Jenny feel uncomfortable. I had no knowledge of what she saw when she looked at me. She, like many others, resorted to filling the silence herself when it was uncomfortable. "Dave, I'm going to have a girlfriend. My love for you is eternal, and I would never put our future in jeopardy, but I must do it. I desire to age alongside you. My age and wrinkly appearance are hindering my ability to attract other men. Your sex skills remain impressive, and I'm eagerly anticipating their growth. I'm uncertain about the length of this period, but I believe it won't last forever unless we both opt for it. It is my sincere hope that you will comprehend my need for this and provide me with your support. Despite your lack of love, I am confident that you will allow me to do this without jeopardizing our future. I am completely convinced of your love. I am committed to never cheating on you. That's the reason we have this conversation. I'm happy is the most important thing in my life. You were fond of it. You can now demonstrate that you are genuinely serious about something. Dave, I have to do this." Apparently, after ending her tirade and waiting for a response, she stopped. Her apprehension caused her to doubt my ability to forgive her. I whispered that I needed to ponder, entered my workplace, and secured the door. I found myself alone and briefly let my emotions flow out of my side. The competition was won by anger, and I allowed her to slather the dirt from the couch until my wrist became painful. Subsequently, I fell back into a chair. The time came for the arrival of sorrow. I struggled to sort everything out, but logic helped me put the emotions back into their proper place, and then I gave it my all. It seems that Jenny had a breakdown or was brainwashed. The only explanations I could offer for her completely typical behavior were that everything was so far from her usual routine. Even after more than an hour, I still couldn't quite put into words certain statements. The primary point was that she was entirely mistaken in her assertion that my love was strong enough to forgive her. The first time she engages in sexual activity with another man, we're done for the whole world. I was too old and uneasy to embark on another relationship. There was only one choice available to me. She would have to discard this senseless and entirely fatal concept. The plan became clear after this decision. I recorded a few notes in my notebook to ensure I didn't forget anything. After 10 minutes, I copied the file from the recorder to the computer to verify it was functioning correctly, restarted it, and went back to work in the kitchen. Jennifer hung up her phone while on the phone and sat at the kitchen table. The wine bottle was no longer in use. I sat in front of her. "Would you mind elaborating on my statement, Jennifer?" She nodded in agreement. "Would it be appropriate for me to give my consent before taking a lover or lovers out on our marriage after being married for 21 years? Is that what it is?" She pondered for a brief moment before responding. "Not exactly, Dave. Doing this is as much as ever before is something I've never had the chance to do. My wish is for you to grant me my permission, but I am not in that position. This is what I plan to do. Allowing this emotionless sex to happen outside of our immediate surroundings will demonstrate that my happiness is foremost among you without causing any harm." She remained silent and looked away. "Jennifer, I'm clueless about what to say." She sank in slightly when her full name was mentioned. "It's not the first time I've used it in our marriage. Jennifer, I am different from Bill, and I will never be happy to see you with another man again. It seems unlikely that I am the same as John and could remain with you if you commit to taking the right action. I was dishonest. Our marriage has been severely damaged in the past few hours. Is there any way you can confirm whether or not I have caused you the same level of pain as you? Is it wrong that I treated you with the same respect and dignity in our marriage? Have I been able to provide you with the love, support, companionship, and compassion you craved? Aren't you satisfied with the amount of money, status, and respect I am paid? Wouldn't it be nice if I could satisfy you in bed as much as possible? What are some ways I could improve as a husband?" At this juncture, she interrupted me. "Dave, don't be stupid. You consistently delivered everything I asked for. I've stated that having sex with you is amazing and it's authentic. We are not involved in this matter. Dave, I love you wholeheartedly. As a husband, I would rate you 10 out of 10. I'm still completely taken aback, Jennifer. Isn't it obvious that I have a strong liking for you? If your body is not as supple as that of a 20-year-old woman, but still manages to be attractive enough to bear 2 children, hasn't it been proven to you by me that you are sexually appealing? Is it not necessary for you to take off your clothes in front of me so that I can admire your gorgeous appearance? Is it not true that I try to seduce you at every opportunity? Isn't it clear from this statement that you're still considered the sexiest person on 2 legs? Isn't that satisfactory for you?" I remained silent, giving her the chance to respond. She merely glanced at the table. I proceeded. "In that particular context, I am left with a perplexing question. If I were your perfect husband, would you be willing to take on the challenge of denying yourself everything and needing it? Why would you be willing to sacrifice unnecessary extramarital sex for my dissatisfaction?" She stated that she didn't perceive it as a risk, Dave. "I am certain that you will comprehend the need for me to do this and address any initial reservations you may have, after which we can proceed as usual. ITDJJTM, my turn to break the ice. Jennifer, I've always treated you as an equal partner and wouldn't have thought of preventing you from engaging in that senseless, self-destructive behavior. It's your call to make a decision. It's important for you to think about what could happen in the future. Actions because you believe in my love and I have consequences for. You are taking a significant risk, and I am not confident that our marriage can endure after your betrayal." I took a break and allowed her to respond. She glanced at the table again. Continuing, "I'm still uncertain, and I believe we must both contemplate our next steps. I have made the decision to believe that this could be a mental issue, and would strongly advise you to seek counseling for yourself or both of us before proceeding. I will stand by these choices and even aid you in locating it. Dave, don't be stupid. I'm not mad. So why should I seek counseling? Jennifer, it's time to showcase your skills. The only way I can save our marriage is through counseling right now. She gave me a look that I found to be incomprehensible. It's also advisable to separate yourself from your friends Petra and Joan. You must decide whether or not they have a negative impact on you. They have already robbed me of my faith in your faithfulness. Your marriage may be negatively affected if you continue to have friendships with them. Let's focus on the million-dollar questions. When is the extramarital time frame going to be revealed, Jennifer? Is there someone you already know? Her gaze towards me was a reflection of how truthful she had to be. A friend is someone that Joan has in her life. She desires for me to see her on Friday. If I have a liking for him, I can take him. Otherwise, there is a guy at work who keeps on flirting with me, and I will try to deal with him. I got up before my anger could return to a normal state. Jennifer, I've made up my mind to go out with you both and pack my things for a few days. It's not necessary for you to depart. Kindly abstain from doing so. It's imperative, Jennifer. I took another seat. Would you say that I'm a reserved, gentle, and patient individual, Jennifer? You are, Dave. Do you know the saying, be careful the snarky guy? She nodded in agreement. I didn't bring it up, Jennifer, because it was never required. I have experienced instances of extreme anger that have left me completely devoid of my own emotions, and it's a shock to many. Blind rage is the reason I killed people on both occasions. Other people were the only ones who kept me company. Dear wife, I am just a hair's breadth away from the third episode. She was able to see my eyes for what it was. Her complexion was slightly tanned. She threw her head back. I went to the bedroom to pack up my belongings for the week, uttering a word on my voice. I'll give you 10 minutes to reflect on this before I leave. Despite my earlier arrival, I found myself with my suitcases and Jennifer still sitting at the table. I put my suitcase on the floor and sat down. When Jennifer responded, she appeared to be in tears. I was told by Petra that you might react in this manner. John stayed with her for 2 weeks when she was unfaithful to him, as per her statement. He came back after noticing her unwavering determination. Without hesitation, Jennifer stared at me and proceeded. Dave, if that helps, think about the cost of getting a divorce. Reflect on the youngsters. Have the thought that you would give me half of our bank accounts as payment and pay me alimony? Reflect on the absence, shame, and agony. This is a task that I must undertake, Dave. I had to leave before the swift red rage overtook me and caused irreversible damage. I got up again and turned around to exit. You have until next Friday to change your mind, I said, walking around the table so you can stand beside her. By this time, I had grabbed her left hand and took off her rings of engagement and wedding. Her eyes were wide open and tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched me put them in my pocket. I glanced at her once more and then stated, I want you to be aware of the risks that you're taking. I walked straight out the front door, took my bags, and left without looking back. As soon as I got into the car, I was taken aback to realize it was already 12 o'clock in the morning. 5 hours had passed between marital utopia and train wreck. I reserved a room at one of the few hotels in the city that still had open registration. I called my boss and requested a day off after being awake for almost 2 hours. He was cognizant of the seriousness of his situation as I consistently boasted that I had only taken 6 days off work in 25 years, and 5 of them were for appendicitis. Neither he nor I requested any particulars. After a sleepless night, I was already aware of my tasks for the next day. I went to an electronics store and purchased 2 voice-activated voice recorders and 2 handsets. I drove home after reading the instructions and making sure they had new batteries. Jennifer was on the job. The kitchen and bedroom phones were equipped with a handset, which I installed. They were always available on my laptop for me to listen to. In the same way, I could retrieve data from the audio recorders I left in the kitchen and living room. Our family attorney's office was our second stop in the morning. Despite not being interested in filing for a divorce since he was our lawyer, I'm still seeking some general advice. He was not a divorce professional, but he reached out to one of his partners. I candidly explained the situation to him and inquired about his next steps. He asked a few questions and then shared with me the most favorable and unfavorable scenarios. I affirmed that I would not be required to pay her child support. I won't have to pay if I can prove that I'm cheating, he said. If things were worse, I would only be granted half of the total, at a minimum, 70%. When I played the recording to them the previous night, he seemed to be in the upper hand, suggesting that some of the conversations were almost like blackmail. I disabled my cell phone usage, except for when I needed to contact someone. I noticed a rise in missed calls and messages from Jennifer every time I switched it on. None of them have been read or answered by me. My third task was to arrange 3 additional parties that I would like to engage in. A meeting was arranged the next day, but it required 6 phone calls, one of which was through Skype. Prior to the meeting, I requested that they avoid talking to Jennifer. They pumped me up with information about what was going on, but I just felt like saying nothing. My fourth action was to contact the receptionist of my doctor. At 12:30, she advised me to call back. I initiated to explain my desires, but he suggested that I meet him at night, which I did, and we spent more than an hour talking. The 5th task I completed during the day was the most difficult. Following his work, I reached out to John, Petra's spouse, and scheduled a meeting at the bar. He acquiesced. I saw confusion on his face as he came towards me. To sum up, I stated that the topic I wished to discuss was deeply personal and suggested leaving whenever he crept out. I informed him of Jennifer's ultimatum from last night and explained to him that I had assumed he was in the same situation. It's fortunate that he didn't depart, but promptly appeared to be a man who had been injured. He had to consume 2 large whiskey glasses before he could open his eyes. He clarified that he doesn't participate in it, but rather despises it. If I had been inclined to doubt him, the intensity of this statement would have made me more convinced. He stated that he only came back home because of the presence of 2 teenagers who prompted him to sacrifice himself for them. He was unable to provide Petra with the house, alimony, child support, and most of their savings due to financial constraints. He took Petra's word and said no when I asked if he had taken legal advice. I conveyed my lawyer's words to him. The children were still living in the house, which was not his usual situation. I inquired about Petra's alleged remarks about their sex life getting better after she took a lover. He was on the verge of choking. He stated that he had engaged in sexual activity with Petra 3 or 4 times within the last 7 months after quitting coughing and ending his life. Whenever I'm inebriated, I reached out to my attorney and committed to paying him for his guidance towards John. John seized the opportunity. I also requested him to do me one last favor. He reluctantly gave his approval. I promised to call him when it was convenient for me. I restored reverence to this broken man. He made a sacrifice for his children, which was sad, but worth it. I briefly contemplated the divide between Petra and John's interpretations of their new sexual encounters. Did Petra intentionally misrepresent the truth, or deceive herself when she confided in Jen? I had a tiring day at the motel, so I went downstairs and read messages from Jennifer and listed voicemails in her phone. I sent her a basic text message. If you're not in favor of me, please reach out to me when you feel like putting an end to this absurdity. I didn't hear anything that was eerie. Having gone without sleep for 6 or more hours, I parked my car across the street from my house as Jennifer left for work. I immediately downloaded everything from the 4 recorders after entering. I initiated the process of wiretapping at the motel. The kitchen telephone was unoccupied, but the bedroom was empty. Upon her return home from work on Monday, the first call was received. I was under the impression that it was Petra. Jennifer recounted her encounter with me and stated that she was unable to comprehend my thoughts because I was usually reserved. Nonetheless, my words and actions were taken as serious by her. She contemplated the idea of putting an end to it. I couldn't fathom what a bitch Petra was. She labeled Jen a crab and eventually convinced her to resume the conversation. The second call was made to Joan, who urged her to keep on striving for the best sexual experience possible in her life. The 2 phone calls were centered on sexual topics, with little mention of feeling young and sexy again. The calls, when taken as a group, caused me to feel anxious. The only thing visible on the recorder in the kitchen was Jen's cries after the last call. My heart was broken, but I pushed my sympathies aside. At 10:45 on Tuesday, Father Wayne, our parish priest, was the first person I had met. Jen's mother, Lorraine, followed him shortly after. As I waited for 11 a.m., I offered them some drinks. They asked me why they were there, but I chose not to answer them. At precisely 11 a.m., I activated Skype on my laptop and flipped it over to allow everyone in my daughter's room at school to view Laura on the screen. Laura inquired about the issue after everyone had exchanged pleasantries. I responded by playing the file from the recorder on my laptop. The second conversation was initiated when I asked Jennifer to confirm her statement from that terrible evening. The playback ended when I shut down the recorder and went to pack my belongings. Jennifer's confirmation of having two potential partners coincided with this announcement. When I watched the tape, as it showed how deep Jennifer's plan was, everyone looked at their television screens in horror and disbelief. Until the recording ended, there was no interruption, and then total bedlam ensued. I listened, aware of my feelings since Sunday. I explained that I had done everything in my power except preventing Jennifer from doing it after everyone had spoken. I clarified why I chose not to do it. Jen's voluntary action was not influenced by any external influence. As soon as I finished speaking, it was clear to everyone that the end of my marriage was just around the corner. Subsequently, I articulated my plan for the following day. The consensus was that the only way to make Jenny stop voluntarily was through my plan, and they all concurred that it was the best course of action. I had never even laid eyes on Lorraine, so it was a surprise that she felt the way towards me. The confusion and anger in her eyes made it clear that she, as a mother, must have been partly to blame for this situation. What is the meaning of the old proverb? Your son is your father until he marries, and your daughter remains your mother forever. I once again laid out my plan, and we settled on a rough schedule, showing that it was showtime tomorrow. Prior to their departure, I reiterated my request that they refrain from making threats towards Jennifer. Her decision was based on the fact that she knew it was the right thing to do, not because of fear of what might happen. I had the most restful night of my life in a week. I had a plan, and I was almost certain. No calls or messages were received from Jennifer. It was a fact that Jen usually slept until at least 9 in the morning, and I knew it was Wednesday. Laura was contacted by me at 9 in the morning, and I suggested that she start reminding her of the rules. It was apparent that her anger did not subside overnight. Jenny dials the number 834 on Wednesday. Hi there, my name is Jenny. Mom, I'm the one. Hi, Laura, good day. Would it be fine if you didn't call during the middle of the week, honey? Mommy, it's not okay. What is the reason for your desire to engage in sexual activity with your father? There was an audible gas on the home end of the phone, and then silence ensued for many seconds. Mom, are you present? Would you be able to hear me? More slurping. Can you identify the person who said it to you? Have you had a chance to talk to your father, my dearest friend? What did he express? It's a fact that I never said that. The topic we addressed was a slight variation in our sexual preferences. It's a shame I didn't mention the possibility of an open marriage, assuming we both agreed with the nonsensical mom. Can you tell me the tale of how you made a foolish decision to go out this weekend and sleep with studs, regardless of whether Daddy was pleased with it or not? The elderly man is devastated by his situation. What was the reason behind this poor man's deserving status? Did you witness him engaging in sexual activity on the verge? My daughter's anger was escalating, and I could hear her. The drooling on her phone was almost invisible to me. Jenny endeavored to regain the initiative. There is no possibility. All accomplished military leaders throughout the ages has a conviction that the most influential person is triumphant. Laura held the moral sway while Jennifer unconsciously realized she was at the bottom of the ethical ladder. She was in dire need of thinking. Is there a chance to contact you again, dear Laura? It's not possible, momfucker. All that remains is for us to clear it up right away. Mom, I'm feeling apprehensive. My wish is to have the opportunity to come with my children and see you both when I become a parent. I desire to see my daddy. Would it be great to see Daddy play with my baby on his lap, just as he did me, while you hold my little girl and sing along like I do? What you are discussing will be the cause of everything to go awry. Mom, how are you doing it? My daughter's attack on her mother resulted in a complete 5-minute ordeal. I was only able to hear sighs and sobs on the end of Jen's phone. Jennifer appeared to be in a state of emotional turmoil when she heard her daughter speak to her with an unmistakable hatred. Obviously, now that Laura and I have voiced our objections, she will abandon her plan. Laura's inability to think quickly during a crisis is understandable, considering her experience. Jenny maintained her composure. It wasn't the same, honey. Mom, I'm always on the edge. Don't be dishonest. Dad reassured me that this was what you had planned. Despite his assurance that he wouldn't permit you to do it, you protested and resisted. With a sudden confidence, Jennifer interrupted. Despite not knowing what your father said, Laura, I want to make it clear that he never told you that I couldn't carry on like this. Laura took the lead once more. It's clear that you didn't do it, Otis. He is aware that he has no authority to dictate what you should do as an equal partner in your marriage. He can only provide you with a suspended rope for hanging on. I'm not sure what this means, Laura. Can you clarify? Laura was obliged to halt. Mom, I can see 3 ways. You can start by talking to your father again and determining if you can persuade him to accept this foolish notion. Mom, I assure you that he will not agree with this. Before proceeding, it's possible to keep going with your plan and observe the progress. Consider the potential risks you may face. The love that flows from my father to myself and Josh is what I do. The decision is known to the entire world. The third choice is to discard this senseless notion. Tell your father that he was temporarily insane and that the entire situation is finished. But I urge you to win him back and pray for forgiveness. He didn't go out of his way. Mom, you've already lost him. He departed to inquire about your decision on whether the second or third choice. The rope was given to you by him, and he is eager to see how you use it. By choosing the third choice, you could potentially survive and leave the gallows behind. You opt for the latter by putting a rope around your neck and pulling the lever to hang yourself. It's clear, Mom, that you are knowledgeable enough to perceive it. I was astonished by Laura's ability to recover. That moment was a source of immense pride for me. Simultaneously, I felt a sense of sadness. Our innocent child, Callus, has been enriched by Jennifer's actions. Jennifer was deeply affected by this. She only reflected on me. There was no indication yet that she had any doubts about my willingness to let her do this. She was unaware that Laura and Josh had a viewpoint, or that they would be informed of it. It was necessary for her to ponder. The time was insufficient. Her next move was strategic in nature. She attempted to deceive, unaware that Laura had all the cards. Honey, please take a moment to consider. Your dad's words were not exactly what you wanted to hear, but it was different. That was the only thing she could do. With a low growl, Laura began an increasingly angry tirade. I'm curious, what is the language spoken by the girl? This is something I would never do again due to embarrassment. She hung up for several minutes before finally ending the conversation. My thoughts were consumed by a sort of Jen's shock. Despite the fact that some people do not engage in dialogue with their mothers, Jen was recorded on the kitchen tape crying and racing to respond to a call. Laura was unresponsive. Laura complied with the script and instructed Lorraine to take the second step. She called me after hanging up saying she couldn't talk because she was so angry. I brought up to her the fact that Jenny had always been an amazing mom and she should be respected and loved. I deliberated extensively on the timing of the second and subsequent phone conversations. Laura called Lorraine before me to avoid the kind of thinking and behavior that Jennifer might engage in during phone calls. Unless she was completely insane, I shouldn't have followed her script as she knew. If she had the chance to give thought, there was a possibility that she might have something to say to me and her daughter. The balance should be balanced by an independent third opinion. I was a bit dazed because I couldn't comprehend why she believed we would be able to make it through. Is there a chance that she's unaware of my existence? I truly believe there was some kind of temporary madness going on there. Sadly, the Friday deadline was so brief that we were unable to convince her or forcefully start treatment. Those with mental illness are always the ones who wait to admit they have a problem. Jenny is welcome, John, and he's been there. Hi, Jenny, my name is Mama. Mom, I'm feeling a bit behind schedule. Would you be willing to give me a call? It's time to have a conversation, or else. What's the problem? Your voice sounds like you're in a state of depression. Yes. Then Laura called and said some very hurtful things. Yes, and I'm aware of what you were probably referring to. Dave also conversed with me. It is not true. It's true, Jenny. How would you do it, Jenny? She let it go and waited for Jennifer to take charge of the situation. Look, Mom, I don't think this has anything to do with you. This is Dave and I. It's all about me. Isn't it evident that every action a daughter takes, regardless of her age, is focused on the mother? I have always esteemed Dave as a good parent to you and an excellent father to all the kids. You are aware that your father was loved. I'm glad he's not around to witness this again. Resting on his soul is the only way to let God's Spirit dwell. He must be losing his mind in his old age due to his daughter's foolish conduct. What did Dave do to deserve the way you're about to kill him? What did you do to him, no? Lorraine's words were so venomous, but I couldn't help but feel her composed demeanor. The calm speech was much more effective than Laura's previous one-sided talk, in my opinion. Jenny's sobbing in the background intensified. Lorraine, possessing the patience of a cobra, apparently allowed Jenny to lead the way. Eventually, Jenny became comfortable enough to be consistent. Mom, I'm clueless about Dave's words, but I didn't do anything to help him. I expressed my frustration with our sexual encounters and asked if he would be willing to let me try another guy out. At this juncture, I stopped recording for a period of time. I have never witnessed my wife telling a complete lie during our long relationship. She was the most truthful person I ever knew. The words she spoke to her mother were not in line with what my voice recording had recorded. It seemed as though she was not telling the truth, and I would have trusted her. This revealed what I had already been aware of. Jenny was deceiving herself. She retreated into the otherworldly world, possibly to protect herself. The reason she sounded so convincing was her firm conviction in the new version of our conversation on Sunday night. She was beginning to unconsciously perceive the depth of the hole she had dug for herself. I resumed recording. Lorraine interrupted Jennifer's actions. The fact that her daughter was lying to her must have made her extremely angry. I made a conscious decision to discuss the untruths with Lorraine and Laura. Their love and forgiveness will be necessary for Jenny if she ever leaves the hospital. Honey, I'm aware that this is completely untrue. I am completely aware of what you said to Dave. I understand that you didn't have any choice but to announce your intention to sleep with him. I am aware of how he has been affected by all of this. Lorraine reacted to Jenny's intervention by rudely confronting her. Just pause and ponder, Jen. What would be your reaction if the shoe was mistakenly placed? Suppose it was Dave who sat down and revealed his plans to engage in sexual activity on the side of the room on Friday night. What would be your response? I'm not sure if you liked it or not, right? Are you open to the idea of that? It's a fact that Dave would never engage in such behavior. He has a deep fondness for me. Jennifer relapsed into tears. Her delusional state was briefly exposed, but she remained composed. It wasn't the way it was, Mom. Jen, I'm not entirely dissatisfied with what you have to say. What is the origin of this unsatisfactory idea? Have you ever expressed dissatisfaction with Dave to me? Jennifer ceased to weep. In this instance, she felt more steadfast. Is it true that you are acquainted with Petra, my friend? The open relationship between her and her spouse has made a significant difference in her marriage, according to her. According to her, the experience of sex with her husband has never been this good, and it has actually brought them closer together. It's my desire that Dave shares my opinion. Her voice ceased to resonate with her. Her subconscious and delusions fought for dominance. Lorraine was once again able to intervene with caution. Does Petra have a similar story to the first time she got married at 18, but later ended her marriage at 28? Is Petra the same person who experienced the loss of her children during her first marriage? The children who are not the one in question have no interest in being with her. These questions were left unanswered by Jennifer. Lorraine's words were as soft as the snorting of an elephant running amok. Lorraine proceeded, speaking in a stillness that seemed to be frozen. Jen, did you say that Petra warned Dave to leave his marriage vows if they didn't support your small game? Jen's sobered expression and sigh combined with an explosive intensity were unmistakable. Jenny, I've lost my patience with your lies no matter what I do. The amount of pain they caused me is indescribable. My sole warning is that engaging in this snobbery will result in losing both you and your spouse. You've already ruined your marriage. You could try to crawl a mile over broken glass and ask for forgiveness, but I have reservations about the outcome. The connection abruptly ended, indicating that Lorraine had disconnected. While the voice recorder in the kitchen recorded Jenny's agonizing screams and tears over an extended period, it was not accurate. Lorraine was a source of slight offense for me. I requested that she avoid making direct threats towards Jennifer. It was crucial that Jennifer resorted to other options, but she did so with the right intent. If she responds to the threats, there is no assurance that her new desires will be entirely wiped out. She had to believe her mistake. Upon reflection, I concluded that I could have stopped making just 2 phone calls. Jennifer would be willing to attend counseling if 3 people claimed she was insane. At this point, my plan was already on autopilot. Lorraine and I were both on the phone with Jennifer and John chatting. I contacted him immediately after Lorraine ended their conversation, asking him to start. John had to expose all of Petra's deceit and reveal to Jennifer that he cared for her lover and why his friend was willing to tolerate her humiliating behavior. He will deny her claims that their sex life has improved. He urged Jenny not to disclose his call to Petra, stating that it could be detrimental to his family. She was contacted at 9:32 a.m. Although I won't go into great detail about what she and Jenny talked about, I will point out that Jen was courteous when she answered the phone, but then suddenly gave a mean expression. The recording made me feel uneasy as I witnessed Jenny's evident pain. It was surprising that Jennifer didn't speak during the conversation. I concluded that the cause was sheer confusion and not any serious listening on Jenny's part. I contacted my attorney while John was performing his duties. The last time I briefed her, we discussed what he would say to Jennifer. It seemed as though the rascal was enjoying himself. Isn't it odd that humor sometimes comes out in the most unexpected places? My assumption is that it's a self-preservation tactic. It's possible that humor can keep you awake at night. A joke from the past that centered on a lawyer was one of them. The demon's haughty behavior leads him to crash into a wall, leaving the other person trapped. Heaven and hell are separated by a wall, as this one appears to be. God contacts Satan and inquires about his response to the destruction. Satan gazes into the hole and declares, "There is nothing." God responds, and my attorney will be contacted by you. Satan smiles and asks, "Where's a lawyer?" Before the battle begins, God comes to the realization that he is defeated. Did he become lawyer, or is his reputation solely based on his bastardishness? Upon concluding our discussion, I reminded him to reach out to me. John called me at 9:43 a.m., and I was in phase 5 of the call. The lawyer was tasked with informing Jennifer that he had learned about the consequences of any divorce caused by her extramarital affair. He should have informed her of her divorce idea and then shared the counsel given to me by his colleague. I requested him to include the terms cheating and adultery in the conversation because I couldn't determine which was more emotional. He accomplished it. The recording suggests that she didn't fully comprehend the advice he gave her, as she spent most of his speech angrily ranting. Despite being a soldier, he continued to speak in his low voice. He phoned me after he finished and wanted to talk to me, but I disconnected from him and called our family doctor for assistance. Jen's response to his call at 9:58 was the expected silence, as if she were a condemned prisoner, staring down the field with one hand and not answering with any answer. The benefactor began a prepared speech shortly after his brief introduction, emphasizing that men who are in an extramarital relationship with another man's wife should wear protection to safeguard her from STDs. He was required to provide a detailed account of numerous illnesses, including their health status and treatment options. Additionally, he had to remind his wife that she should have been careful not to bring these diseases back to her husband as an irresponsible spouse. I'm arguing that he ought to have spoken all of this. Jenny hung up after 108 seconds of the conversation, using a strange, strangled cry. The day after the medic called me, I made my final call to Father Wayne, who confirmed that he was at our doorstep. The time on the judgment day was 10:03 a.m. The last call and the difficult coordination task were completed on Wednesday morning, which reminded me of 3 days in a row. Finally, I shook my head. The sight of my old house was familiar to me. Upon waking up, I could see Jenny in her robe, completely upset and visibly upset. She was left heartbroken by the 5 intense and emotionally charged phone calls she received. She had not eaten breakfast and had no opportunity to ponder the calls since the first one was at 8:30 a.m. I witnessed her opening the door to our spiritual leader, Wayne, who has been a gentle mentor for 12 years. It had been a little over an hour since Wayne's father called me to let him know that he was home. She requires your assistance. I was already parked in the vicinity of our house. At the door, he asked for forgiveness and reached out to me for assistance. Subsequently, he exited. I could imagine the range of emotions Jenny would have, from remorse to anger, as I walked through the door. Repentance will indicate that I have achieved something. Anger can be a sign of regret, embarrassment, or failure. I never anticipated what I was promised, even in my earliest fantasies. Jenny was positioned at the kitchen table with her head in her hands and looking out towards the window. Her distress was evident, with swollen eyes, bloodshot wounds, scattered hair, and torn robes. I never figured out how it all came about. With a soft voice, I called out to her and laid down beside her. My voice, touch, and existence were unknown to her. I looked into her eyes and was horrified. There was a complete absence of visual evidence for me. There was no one at home despite the light being on. Jenny is no more. It was clear to me that I had exceeded my limits. My intention was to shock her, but I ended up killing her. An ambulance was called by me and she was taken away. In the hospital, I spent my days and nights with her. I had to part with her in the morning when she was transferred to a psychiatric hospital. I disclosed to the psychiatrist in the vicinity what I had done. I inserted myself into the recordings and was candid about my involvement in damaging it. To his credit, he didn't scrutinize me. He wasn't obligated. My self-denial was evident. The information he had gained was sufficient for him to start treating Jenny. He stated that she was in a state of madness. It's fair to say he was adept at explaining things in plain English. Stupor is a type of defense that the brain uses to protect itself. The mind's excessive activity leads to a state of mental insignificance, which causes consciousness to lie still and silently. All brainwashers who have undergone this condition are familiar with it, and they destroy the old mind before starting a new one. And so, there I am. Home is where I am today, separated from the person I love and with a strong sense of responsibility. I found it difficult to listen to all the recordings, but I eventually did. It feels like I'm about to enter a stupor. I am seeking to uncover the cause of Jenny's downfall by focusing on the light at the end of the tunnel. If I can determine this, I'll communicate with the psychiatrist, which may aid in Jenny's treatment. Despite the selfishness of my soul, I have not received any congratulations on my work. It's possible that I could have slept for the last 3 days. I was under the impression that the ultimate trigger was due to Jenny's initial communication with Feather Wayne. I didn't have to listen to this again. It was evidently a ghost town in my memory. He was able to convince Jenny that he had plans for her once they arrived at the house. She firmly and unambiguously rejected this once more. Several minutes of silence ensued as the Reverend took out his laptop and powered it on. Then, after 30 seconds of listening to the recording I gave him, all hell broke loose. The one who started with, "Are you able to tell me what I said? Is it okay for you to take a lover or lovers out of our 21-year-old happy marriage with me? You need my permission. It's the same thing." It was evident that Jenny had a collapse. Although I am not a detective, the screams and incoherent babble made it all clear. The doctor was curious about the significance of certain parts of the recording. She was recently discovered telling a bold falsehood to an unapologetic man of God. The act of lying to your daughter, mother, lawyer, and doctor is a matter for God's representatives on earth. Did she truly have faith in her delusions at that time? Keep in mind that she had no opportunity to comprehend the truth since her deception began at 8:32 a.m. The recording must have caused the collapse of this card house, as she had her own ears. I was unable to make up my mind, and it was eating me up. Jenny spent nearly 6 weeks in a care facility. I was unable to see or communicate with her for the first 3. The medical professionals aimed to regulate all sensory inputs. After 3 weeks, her principal therapist wanted to confirm that Laura and I were going to forgive Jenny. He didn't provide a specific answer, but it was clear that communicating with Jenny required affirmative action. Moreover, he asserted that she should not be exposed to those who had an impact on her, such as Patra and Joan. Doctors were able to optimize hormone replacement therapy doses during the last 3 weeks of the recovery. Without elaborating further on the big words, it appeared that Jenny's breakdown was caused by manageable premenopausal hormonal changes. He stated that this is pure madness. The psychologist suggested that Patra had a strong and almost hypnotic effect on Jenny because of her vulnerability. I had a 99.9% chance of concluding treatment, regardless of the circumstances. The remaining loggers covered the complete 100%. I finally realized the amount of remorse I had to pay. She is still trying to kill me with sex and love, even though she was discharged a month ago. A quote from Spike Milligan was copied and used by her at least once a week. "I have a certificate that proves my mental stability, and you should know that I left the telephone handsets in place." Patra's call was the most comical one. Jenny's reaction upon learning who she was outraged. She listed 20 different synonyms for the word pataskuka, some of which I had not heard before. It was necessary for me to search on Google. Ultimately, she terminated the conversation, hoping that Patra would escape and expire. Jenny's language and behavior are completely out of character for her. Joanna was sent on a gentler but still firm course. During his final 4 months with Patra, I offered emotional support to John. It was enjoyable, dear ones. He initiated by giving her an ultimatum to avoid having sex behind him. They had a disagreement, and he requested that she vacate. He lured her into his trap, and she stayed away for a month before finally crawling back inside and asking for forgiveness. She vowed to be a good girl from this point on. After 3 months, her well-known departure from town with a video camera in her bedroom resulted in the final blow to his marriage. Patra was hit by a bitch in front of her children when her lover's wife visited them at their family home, which was fortunate. John considers this call to be one of the most productive ones he has ever made. He played exceptionally well. Patra's behavior, including leaving his family home for a month, making her the most likely person to leave her lover, the tape he produced, and his decision not to extend his work hours to school hours, proved to be in favor of the judge. He was granted a 60-40 portion of the property while keeping the house and taking over the children. He showed up on the day of the divorce and expressed his personal gratitude to Jenny for proposing to cut her working hours. Bill made an effort to have me meet him, but I refused. I am convinced that I honor everyone's decision-making rights, but I recognize that it is tough for me to engage in conversations with men who I don't have any respect for. My sense of humor resurfaced, and I knew that my own healing was complete. I recall sitting in the living room, sipping single malt whiskey and mentally reflecting on the entire incident. I'm surprised that I wasn't familiar with the Pope's phone number. To ensure that your second dishonesty doesn't become a trick, subscribe to our channel and listen to the next story, as this one is incomparable. If you're under 18, don't bother to listen to the next one.